Baruch Spinoza was a 17th century Dutch philosopher who believed that human misery comes from misunderstanding how the universe works. He believed that the entire universe runs on an unbreakable chain of cause and effect. Everything that happens, including those who get rich, who gets famous, and who struggles, happens exactly the way it has to. Because of this, he thought getting jealous of someone else was just bad maths. When you compare yourself to a wealthy friend, you're usually thinking something like, "That could have been me." Spinoza said that this is a complete misunderstanding of reality. Thinking that could have been me is like looking at a triangle and getting upset because it doesn't have four sides. Your current life is strict, calculated, the result of your unique genetics, your environment, and your past experiences. Wishing your life looked exactly like someone else's means that you're determining that the universe breaks its own fundamental laws just for you. He explored all of this in his book called Ethics. He wrote the book like a geometry textbook in which he used axioms, definitions, and strict mathematical proofs to explain human emotions. So in this video, we're going to use his philosophy to talk about how to stop comparing yourself to people who have more. Number 1. There are no alternate what-ifs. When you see someone who has more than you, a bigger house, a higher salary, or a better career, you naturally think, well, they made the right choices, they worked harder, and they earned it. And by default, that means that you must have made the wrong choices. Spinoza argued that this entire way of thinking is flawed because human free will is also a complete illusion. We assume that when we make a choice, we do it completely independent of our genetics, our past, and our environment. Spinoza, however, completely disagreed. To him, the universe isn't some playground of independent choices. It's a massive, unbreakable chain of cause and effect. Spinoza famously compared human beings to a rolling stone. Imagine a stone kicked down a hill. Halfway down, it suddenly wakes up and gains consciousness. It realizes that it's moving, but it's got no memory of the kick. Because it can feel itself rolling, the stone proudly concludes, "I am choosing to move." Spinoza said that we're like that stone. We think we're making independent decisions, but we're just reacting to our genetics, childhoods, the economy, and the exact chemical state of our brains on any given day. Think about a former classmate who just achieved massive financial success, while you feel stuck in the exact same place you were 5 years ago. Your immediate thought is probably, we started at the exact same starting line, in the exact same classroom, so I should be where they are. But Spinoza would point out that you're looking at two different chains of cause and effect that separate you both. First, there's your chain. Your specific genetics, your childhood experiences, your unique brain chemistry, and the exact sequence of events that led up to where you are today. Then there's their chain, their specific genetics, their unique risk tolerance, the subtle encouragement they got from a parent when they were 7, or the random mentor they met on a Tuesday afternoon. You were two different stones kicked down two different hills. Expecting your life to look exactly like theirs is planting an apple seed and getting upset that it didn't grow into a giant oak tree. If you walk into a forest and see a towering oak tree standing next to a tiny, struggling sapling, you don't look at the sapling and call it a failure. You recognize that the larger tree has had more time, better soil, more sunlight, and deeper roots. You accept both these trees exactly as they are because you understand cause and effect. Spinoza is just asking you to look at human beings with that exact same logic. That person who has more than you didn't just magic their success into existence out of nowhere, and more importantly, your current situation isn't a deep personal failure. Now, does this mean you haven't made any bad choices? Well, of course not. Everyone's made bad choices. You might have taken the wrong job, or trusted the wrong person, studied the wrong subject, or wasted years of your life doing absolutely nothing. But Spinoza's point is that given exactly who you were at that specific moment in time, given your level of maturity, the information you had available, and the exact state of your brain on that day, you couldn't have made any other choice. If you rewound the clock 1,000 times under those exact same conditions, you'd make that exact same mistake 1,000 times. You are exactly where your specific chain of causes brought you. And once you accept that, you can let go of the guilt, drop the comparisons, and focus entirely on what to do next. Number 2, ignore the scoreboard. We spend a massive amount of our lives suffering because we keep measuring our jobs, our bank accounts, and our lives in general against some giant invisible scoreboard that society has placed in front of us. But Spinoza points out that that scoreboard does not exist. He argued that concepts like good and evil or perfect and imperfect aren't real properties of the physical universe. You can't put perfection under a microscope. You cannot weigh success on a scale. Spinoza said that these concepts are merely fictions that we create in our own minds the moment we start comparing two things to one another. Nature has no measuring stick. A mountain isn't necessarily better than a valley. A tiger isn't particularly more successful than a deer. They just exist. The universe simply is, without judging or ranking any of its parts. Yet, humans often forget this. When we see someone living in a sprawling multi-million-dollar mansion while we're living in a small one-bedroom apartment, we automatically assume the mansion is objectively better and that the person living in it is winning at life. But the universe doesn't view that mansion as better. The universe just sees bricks, glass, and wood arranged in a specific pattern, taking up a little bit more space than the concrete and steel of your apartment. The only reason that mansion seems better to you, and the only reason it makes you feel like a failure, is because you accepted some rule that people just made up out of thin air. Once you stop treating society's opinions like they're actual laws of physics, you start to realize that there's no universal standard that you're failing to meet. So to stop comparing yourself to others, you simply have to stop trying to win a game that doesn't exist. Number 3, understanding the one substance. Most of us look at the world and see billions of separate, disconnected things. You see yourself as an isolated individual, totally separate from your neighbor, your co-workers, and, well, me. Spinoza said that this is a total illusion. He was what philosophers call a monist, meaning someone who believes that everything in the universe, including mind and matter, is just a different expression of the exact same unified whole, which he called the substance. He argued that everything in existence, every person, every animal, every planet, isn't a separate object, but just a temporary expression of that one single substance. And these temporary expressions he called modes. Think of the ocean as Spinoza's one substance. As the water moves, it creates millions of individual waves. For a few seconds, a wave looks like a completely separate, independent thing. But it isn't. It's just a temporary shape that the ocean is taking. In this metaphor, the waves are the modes. Similarly, you and the person you're comparing yourself to are just two waves on the exact same ocean. You're both just temporary expressions of the exact same underlying fabric of nature. Imagine you're an instrumentalist playing in a large orchestra. You play the flute and somebody else plays the violin. If you're stuck in the illusion of being separate, you might sit there feeling insecure because the violinist gets more solos or more applause than you do. You view them as a competitor, taking attention away from you. But if you step back and look at the reality, you realize that you're both just different expressions of the same piece of music. The flute and the violin aren't fighting each other, they're just different modes of the exact same song. And this precise idea applies to wealth as well. When an old friend suddenly makes millions on a real estate deal while we're just grinding away to pay our mortgage, we usually get jealous because we see ourselves as completely separate from them. We picture the world as a giant room full of disconnected people fighting over some limited pile of cash. But when you look at it through Spinoza's lens, you realize that you and your friends are just both different expressions of the same universe. And those millions of dollars? They're just a temporary pile of resources the universe gathered in one spot for a little while. Think about your own body. Right now, there's way more blood pumping through your heart than through your pinky finger. But you don't think your pinky finger is losing the battle. You know it's part of the same connected body. And it works the exact same way with wealth. The universe just moves its resources around at different times. Your friend's massive bank account doesn't mean that you are falling behind. It just means that the universe is expressing itself differently in that spot right now. Number 4. Find your conatus. At the very center of Spinoza's philosophy is a concept he called conatus. He defined this as the deep built-in drive that every single living thing has to preserve its own existence and expand its power. A tree's conatus is that stubborn push to drive its roots deep into the ground for water. A tiger's conatus is its raw instinct to hunt and stay alive. For plants and animals, this drive is just about physical survival. But for humans, it goes deeper than just staying alive. Your mind and body are built from a one-of-a-kind combination of biology, genetics, and past experiences. Because your exact makeup has never existed before in the history of the world, the things that give you energy and expand your power will look very different from the person standing next to you. Take a loud, crowded room, for example. An extrovert's conatus feeds on that social interaction. The longer they stay, the more energized and powerful they feel. But for an introvert, that exact same room exhausts them. They expand their power and feel most alive when reading, creating, or having a quiet one-to-one conversation. The room itself isn't objectively good or bad, it just interacts completely differently with their unique natures. A fish explores the world by swimming, a bird does it by flying. A fish doesn't waste time feeling bad that it can't build a nest in a tree, it just gets on with being a fish. But when you get caught up envying someone else, you aren't just staring at their bank account or their status, you're trying to abandon your own nature in order to copy theirs. Let's say you have a friend who thrives in the hyper-competitive world of corporate finance. Their nature is fueled entirely by high-stress, cutthroat negotiations and 80-hour weeks. But you, well, you're a creative person. You need deep focus time to build things from scratch and a flexible schedule. If you sit around agonizing over the fact that your finance friend makes 3 times your salary, you're assuming that what feeds their nature will also nourish yours. You're trying to force someone else's way of being onto your own, and it will always make you miserable. To stop comparing yourself to others, you have to get brutally honest about what makes you thrive. Once you figure that out, pour all your energy into growing it rather than trying to be a second-rate version of somebody else. Number 5. Focus on active emotions. Spinoza split our emotions into 2 groups, passive and active. Passive emotions, which he called passions, are triggered by external forces that you don't fully understand. For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic and you instantly get furious and let a complete stranger ruin your morning, that is a passive emotion. When you have a passive emotion, you're just reacting blindly to the outside world. Active emotions, on the other hand, come from you. They happen when you use your own logic and reason to understand the world clearly, and you act based on that understanding. If that same car cuts you off, but you use reason to realize the driver might be rushing to an emergency and that yelling won't change the past, you can simply let it go and keep your peace of mind. When you have an active emotion, you are in the driver's seat. Spinoza pointed out that jealousy and comparison are the passive emotions. When you fixate on someone else's money, their job, or their lifestyle, you stop acting on your own terms and start living as a reaction to someone else's success. Imagine your friend who has the perfect marriage or relationship. If you're stuck in a passive emotional state, you scroll through their photos, feel bad about your own relationship status, and complain to other people that their relationship is probably fake anyway. In this scenario, another person's romance is controlling your nervous system. You're acting on what Spinoza called inadequate ideas, meaning that you're confused and just reacting to the surface level of things. However, if you switch to an active emotion, you look at the same relationship, but you use reason instead of just reacting. You realize your peer's marriage is just the result of a long chain of past events, genetics, and timing. You realize that getting angry at someone else's partnership makes no logical sense. But how do you stop being passive and take control? Spinoza gave us a very practical formula for this. He wrote, "An emotion, which is a passion, ceases to be a passion as soon as we form a clear and distinct idea of it." In simple terms, the fastest way to kill envy is to put it under the microscope. When you catch yourself comparing your life to someone else's, stop and break it down with pure logic. Ask yourself exactly why this thing is bothering you. Usually, you'll realize that you're actually upset because you tied your self-worth to something you can't control, like how much money someone else makes, their relationship, or how many people like them. Once you see that your envy is based on a totally irrational foundation, the emotion naturally dissolves. Number 6. Redefining true wealth. Before Spinoza wrote his major philosophical works, he was on track to take over a successful family business. But he looked around at what everyone else was chasing, that's wealth, fame, and pleasure, and realized it was all a trap. He saw that all of these material things have one fatal flaw. They're completely unstable and entirely outside of your control. If you tie your happiness to money or status, you're handing over your peace of mind to external forces. The economy can crash, public opinion can flip, and you can lose everything you worked for in a single afternoon. Spinoza argued that if you want true peace, you have to anchor yourself to something permanent. You have to chase what he called the highest good. He famously called this the intellectual love of God. But Spinoza's version of God wasn't some old man up in the sky with a great big bushy beard. No, for him, God was simply nature. That is to say, the entire universe and all the physical laws that govern it. So when he talks about the highest good being the intellectual love of God, he means reaching a deep rational understanding of how reality works. And this completely destroys the entire foundation of comparison. Think about how material wealth actually works. If someone buys a specific piece of real estate, you can't buy that exact same property anymore. And status works the exact same way. If someone else is ranked number 1 in your industry, you have to be at least number 2. Because physical things and social titles are strictly limited, chasing them forces you into a constant state of competition. You view everyone around you as a potential threat. But knowledge? Knowledge is not a limited resource. Imagine you're trying to master an instrument, like the flute. If another musician masters a complex piece of sheet music or figures out some brilliant new breathing technique, their skill doesn't subtract from your brain. Someone else having more understanding doesn't leave less understanding in the world for you. If anything, it just adds more to it. So expand your knowledge, study what they did, listen to their timing, and learn from them. Their wealth of knowledge also increases yours. So when you shift your focus from chasing material goods to chasing a rational understanding of the world, comparison becomes completely irrelevant. And that's our video. But what did you think? I've been Dan, you've been awesome, and if you enjoyed what you saw or found it helpful at all, why not check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist? And for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.